Okay, so the sampling methods are basically discussing how we use these methods to do statistical models. Okay, so for example, an experiment imposes treatment and it uses random assignment of subjects to have those treatments. So if you're doing an experiment, then it's gonna put some type of treatment on something. There's gonna be some type of treatment for the survey or the method. Observational study is when you're just basically watching or looking at something. It observes some trait or phenom, does not actively impose a treatment, and it uses sampling methods to obtain the data. Okay, so basically you're just watching. So for observational study, you're just watching, and an experiment you impose treatment. Again, an experiment imposes treatment. Observational study, you're just watching. So then when we get here to our sampling methods, when we're looking at sampling methods, we have population, a census, sample, and then we have a designer sample, okay? So our population, the population is the big group, okay? So your big group is your population. The large group is your population, okay? It's the entire group or individuals we want to gather information about. So the big picture. A census. A census is when you're gathering information about every individual in that population. So if I say that I wanted to do a survey on Smith High School to see which students like math, my population would be Smith High School because it's the whole school, it's the big picture. And if I wanted to do a census, I would have to do all 1,200 to 1,300 students that are at Smith High School because I have to gather information from every student who is there. Sample is part of the population that we examine to gather information about the population. That's your sample. And the designer sample is basically the method that you choose to create your study. When you do your study, you don't want to have any type of biases, so you want to design your study to make sure you don't have any biases or favors towards one particular population group. All right, your probability-based sampling methods is number one, your simple random sample. A simple random sample is the one that most time happens. So with your simple random sample, it's basically when you're choosing all the names out of a hat, or using a spinner, or if you have popsicle sticks and everybody's name is in the popsicle is in the cup, and you're pulling popsicle sticks to gather those names. That's a simple random sample. It's basically completely random. A systematic sample. Systematic sampling is when you're choosing every kth number from the population. So every 100 person, or if we're counting the class in a group. If I say, okay, we're gonna start at one, you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's how you're choosing those. But you have to make sure that you have the whole group in order to do every so often every whatever person. Okay. Cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is selecting an entire subgroup based on your simple random sample of the previous group. So you have, think about Smith High School. So when we have Smith High School, we have the whole school, but then we have different departments. We have the English department, the math department, the social studies department, the science department, fine arts, and regular arts, right? So those are all different departments. That's would be a cluster. So you would have Smith High School as the department, and then the cluster would be the Smith High School as the population. Sorry, and then your cluster would be the departments. Okay. A stratified random sample splits the population into two groups and then takes a simple random sample from each strata. So basically, an example of that would be if I had Smith High School and I split Smith High School between core subjects and electives. And then I choose a simple random sample from the core subjects and a random sample from the elective subjects. That's how we will get a stratified random sample. A non-probability sampling is basically self-selected sample. So basically, if you're going to vote in the presidential election, or if you're going to enter yourself in American Idol, or if you do internet polls, or if you just anything you randomly say, oh, I just want to be in this. That's a voluntary sample. Somebody's volunteering to do the survey or volunteering to be a part of your study. That's voluntary sample. A convenient sample is if somebody is right next to me. So if I say, oh, I want to see how many people in the classroom like chocolate, and I choose the person that's standing right next to me or sitting right next to my desk, that'll be that'll be convenient sample. Some sources of bias in your sample will be selection bias. Selection bias is basically when groups of population are left out of the sample. So a selection bias would be if you're doing a phone survey, or you're surveying people when they're at work, or if you're saying, oh, I just want to survey girls and not do the boys. That's a selection bias. You're choosing which groups you want to survey. Response bias is based off the behavior of the respondent or the interviewer. So basically, if you're talking to your grandparents and you say, and your grandparents say, "Oh, hey, how are your grades today?" and you answer them, "Oh, my grades are great," but you know you're failing a class. That's response bias. You're giving them the response they want, or you're responding based off of who you're talking to. The non-response bias would also be when you're giving a sample, or you're choosing an individual to be a part of your study and they don't respond. So, for example, if you go to Burger King, McDonald's, or whatever your favorite restaurant is, and they have those surveys at the end say, hey, if you answer these few questions, you can get $5 off your next order. Or if someone calls your phone, like those spam calls, and you don't answer, and you don't send a survey back. So those are the type of things that are non-response. You don't respond to it. Okay? So these are the type of sampling methods. If you have any questions, please let me know. And then I want you guys to work on the sheet that goes with it. So for example, let me get to my thing. Your data collection sheet is the next thing you're going to work on. So, for example, if I'm looking at this one right here and I say number 1, I want to consider the following newspaper headlines and identify the population and parameter. So for A, it says the average SAT score for ASU freshmen up to 200 points. Again, the population is the whole thing. So if I'm looking at the population for that, my population would be ASU incoming freshmen. So my population would be the ASU incoming freshmen. That's my population. And then my parameter would be SAT up to 200 points. That would be my parameter for that one. Okay, so I want you to look at each one of the examples and go through the questions and answer those, and then we'll talk about it when I return.